Thanks for joining us on our streaming service for your drought alert. I'm your first alert meteorologist, Callie Zanandri. Joining us today is Ali Mazurek, engagement climatologist with the Colorado Climate Center at Colorado State University. Welcome, Ali.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, well, this year drought has been on everyone's mind. Big picture, what's the current conditions like?
Yeah, so right now we have widespread drought conditions throughout Colorado. About 95% of the state right now is currently experiencing some form of drought, and we have about a third of the state that are experiencing at least extreme drought or worse conditions.
Now, we've had some rain, some mountain snow this spring. Has that made a meaningful dent in the drought?
Unfortunately, not really. We had, our deficits in mountain snow stack up over the course of many months. And so while we did see some beneficial precipitation in April and May, it really wasn't enough to kind of make up for those major deficits that we saw throughout the winter.
Now, how does this drought situation compare to previous years?
Yeah, and that's a tough question because it kind of depends on how you're looking at it. Kind of the most recent, biggest drought that we had in recent years would have been around late 2020 through early 2021. There's been some others in the last couple of decades. 2018 was a big drought year, 2003, 2012. So yeah, we've had some recent droughts in the last couple of decades, but it's kind of too early to say whether this particular drought will last as long as those previous droughts had.
What are some of the impacts Coloradans may notice if drought conditions continue through the summer?
Sure, there's a number of impacts to talk about there, and some of them we've already started to see in terms of water restrictions through many of Colorado's cities. We've seen some burn bans with the dry conditions that we're seeing. I think maybe one that some people might not always think about is tourism impacts. So we have less mountain snow coming down on our reservoirs and waterways, and those are obviously huge sources of tourism, from rafting to fishing, boating, all of those things. So we might see some impacts to those areas as well this summer.
Now, how concerned should we be about wildfires given the current drought conditions?
Yeah, wildfires are a bit tricky because there's multiple factors involved there, but one of them, of course, is our dry soil conditions. So one concern there is our mountain snowpack melted off fairly early this year, and we didn't have a lot of it. So there's definitely concern that as we head into the summer months and it gets warmer up there and sunnier and drier, that those soils will start to get really crispy and be kind of primed for, if we get some sort of spark, they would be kind of ready to go in terms of if there were to be a wildfire initiated.
And you mentioned that the snowpack, it melted off already this year, about 2 weeks earlier than average, making it the 5th earliest on record. Why is this such a big deal?
Yeah, so mountain snowpack is super important, not just to Colorado, but for the West as a whole. Mountain snowpack is our main source of water in Colorado. So we depend on that snowpack for water to fill our reservoirs and come down our riverways to provide water for agriculture and our cities and things like that. So when we have less of it and we're seeing it melt off earlier, we don't necessarily have as much of it to work with throughout the summer months.
Now, NOAA recently released its summer outlook. What is it showing for Colorado in terms of temperature and precipitation?
Yeah, so in terms of temperature, we're seeing above average likelihood to see above normal temperatures heading into the summer. And then on the precipitation side, we're actually seeing increased chances for above normal precipitation in Colorado as well, which is something positive to look forward to after the winter that we just had.
Now, a lot of people hear above average precipitation. They often think, why do we have drought concerns? It doesn't necessarily equate. Tell me about that.
Sure. So when we're talking about above average precipitation, we're kind of looking at it in a single point in time. So we might say, oh, we're expecting above average precipitation for June, but that doesn't factor into any of the kind of antecedent conditions that we were working with. So it's not taking into account that we're already in kind of an extreme and exceptional drought situation in a lot of the state. So while that precipitation, depending on how much we get, might put a dent in the drought, it might not totally alleviate it.
All right, well, El Nino is officially here. There's been a lot of buzz about this. It could break some records. That's what people are talking about. Explain what El Nino is and what it could mean for Colorado going into the summer as well as the fall and the winter.
Sure. So El Nino is one phase of this large-scale climate pattern that we call El Nino Southern Oscillation. And so El Nino is one part of that, and essentially what drives these conditions are sea surface temperatures off the coast of South America. And those shifts in sea surface temperatures have large-scale implications to our global temperature and precipitation patterns, including here in Colorado. So in Colorado, kind of what we tend to see with El Nino is it does often favor above normal precipitation. It's not a slam dunk relationship, but it does often mean that we do see wetter conditions when we have El Nino conditions in place. And that relationship kind of holds both through the summer as well as fall and winter. So definitely at least a positive thing to look forward to, but not a slam dunk forecast.
And why are people saying it could be a record-breaking year, a super El Nino, some are calling it?
Sure. So yeah, with El Nino, we often talk about the strength of it, and that's governed by how strong the sea surface temperature differences are. So this year, we're seeing above average favorability for a super El Nino event, as you've probably heard. And I will say that doesn't always necessarily equal stronger impacts necessarily, but it is something to kind of keep an eye out for. We have seen super El Nino events in the past that have meant wetter conditions for Colorado. So again, not a slam dunk relationship, but something positive to keep in mind.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that. Are there any climate trends you're watching particularly closely as we head into summer and fall?
Sure. Of course, El Nino, which we've already covered, but also the monsoon. So the monsoon is also, it's sort of separate from El Nino, but it's a big source of moisture for Colorado, especially in the summer months, and particularly for southern Colorado and the western part of the state. So as we head into summer, that's typically when we see those monsoon conditions set in. And some of our climate models have been hinting at that we might see a stronger than normal monsoon. So if we get that, that could pump more moisture into the state, which could give us elevated precipitation chances, which is another positive sign giving our drought conditions.
And with the drought conditions, just how much moisture do we need to, I know we've talked about, the little bit we've seen, we've made small dents, but to really dig out of something like this, how much will we need to see?
Yeah, and it's easy to kind of lose sight of that when you've gotten precipitation in your area. You're like, everything's green right now. But yeah, we kind of need multiple rounds of kind of steady, inch plus storms in order to kind of make those deficits chip away further.
Anything else you'd like folks to know about the drought and the climate outlook?
Yeah, I think just keeping in mind that with our drought, we've been stacking up these deficits over the course of months. So don't lose sight of that fact when we have, one or two precipitation events that come through. Keep in mind that we need this to happen multiple times. Yeah, and that's kind of it. Let's just keep our fingers crossed, I think, for precipitation this summer and a better winter next year.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, Allie, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you here next week for your Drought Alert.